agreed we were gonna have a workshop or not, but when Justin and I talked about it, I thought it makes sense to have one so we could talk a little bit about things prior to the official agenda item 23 on the back, so. Thank you all for attending. Justin, you wanna get us started a little bit, what you put together?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there isn't a whole lot that is new in the packet. A lot of it is things that you have seen before. But we did include the items from the last packet, things that David had put together, which didn't get distributed before the last meeting. So hopefully just take a look at those things for this meeting. But I did update the draft resolution, and there was a mix-up with the two resolutions in the packet, in the original version of the packet. One was supposed to be fire only, and one was supposed to be fire plus sheriff. But because of that, there's a few new versions in the supplement in yellow. So there's three new versions in the yellow supplement. One is the actual fire only new, one is fire only renovation, and then one is a draft resolution that Zach provided for inclusion. We have put together and updated the draft bond proposal language, which is attached to the resolutions. And the way that I put the resolutions together, at the very end, there's Exhibit A, which is the bond proposal language. And then below the bond proposal language are draft figures that you could insert into the bond proposal language as a resolution. The idea being that the millage rate roughly matches with the dollar figures, and then you just take the dollar figure and the appropriate millage rate and stick them in the appropriate locations. Also on page 12 of the work session packet, we put together kind of more, what does a mill equate to? What kind of a project does that get you in terms of dollars? And what is the monthly and annual impact to residents based on that millage?
So Justin, before we get into any council formal discussion, I want to make sure we do not arrange participation. So Josh, I'd like to just make sure I know who's online here.
Jimmy Jackson, Lucas Lawson, and Murray.
Okay.
Oh, no, that's great. That's better.
Does anyone online want to say anything under non-arranged this evening? David, thanks for joining us.
More than a pleasure, the Mayor.
Seeing no hands. Okay, now I'll call on the audience. Anybody want to speak on a non-arranged? Please come up, state your name and record for the address. Joe?
Good evening, Council. Keel. First off, I have something that's kind of new because it just came out about an hour ago. So last Thursday night, when the packet came out, I went online and got that packet and went through it. And I remember very vividly when I was on council, and I apologize ahead of time because I'm going to say a lot of times when I was on council before. Because,
You really were on.
I was. And when I was on council, it became a very strong sticking point that information be made available in the packet by Thursday night. And that's where that Monday deadline at 5 p.m. the week before came from. And the rule was, they get in by 5 p.m. wasn't the one in the packet. We also had where we communicated with staff and said, hey, you got a question about this? And I'd send out a Detling email or court meeting email, and they would email back out to council and say, here's the answer to those questions. I think that makes good sense. I think that's a good practice, and I think it keeps everybody on the same page. However, that being said, the council rules are very strict and say any information that somebody wants to put into the meeting has to be in by 5 p.m. Monday before the meeting. So the motion that was quite extensive and frankly jumps the gun on the whole discussion tonight, that was inserted and sent out is in violation of Rule 2.1 for council rules, and it says, unless there's unanimous consent of everybody on council that is present, it shall not be considered. It doesn't say it may be considered. It doesn't say anything. It says unless there's unanimous consent, it shall not be considered. So take that for what you will. I'd like to talk a little bit about the millage discussion for tonight. There was some of the different items that were part of the discussion. One of them was talking about the monthly impact. I personally am not in favor of discussing a monthly impact. I think the first thing that I think of when I hear that is I think of a car salesman. When I'm on a car lot and he says, you know, for another $10 a month, when do you want to have heated seats? I don't think we want to be saying to our residents, hey, for another $10 a month, don't you want 2 more bays? I just don't think that's the discussion we need to have. I think it minimizes the finances of people. I think it minimizes the people that are on a fixed income and who it really is a concern to. And the other thing is not everybody, you know, not everybody thinks that that incremental amount is worth it. So it's just, the taxes are what they are. There's so much a year, that's what they are. There's also been discussion about the ISO rating, that the potential is that the ISO rating could improve and that it may be offered, and it has been offered in public, that an improvement in ISO rating could offset some of the cost in insurance that would help offset some of the taxes that people have. First of all, there's no guarantee that the ISO rating is going to change if we build a new station. What I was told when I was the head of the chair of the PAFD board and was working with GPAs and we went through ISO, I was told that without being a full-time station, we could not improve from where we were on our ISO rating. Now that may have changed. Maybe that's different. Maybe there's something about a station that would say we are going to get a better ISO rating. Even if that did happen, there's no saying what the change in that's going to be for every individual person. So part of your guidelines in your that you publish are to be accurate with the taxpayers. It isn't accurate to tell them that they are going to see a decrease in their insurance because of this fire station getting built. It's just not accurate. And what about people that don't have insurance? There are people that don't have insurance on their homes. They're not going to see anything. What about renters? Are renters going to see a decrease in their rent when the fire station gets built and the ISO rating improves? I mean, you're asking for trouble by telling people they're going to get something with no way of guaranteeing and no way of actually knowing what it is that they're going to get. Also, there's a lot of comments in the survey about the fire station. And I think people are in favor of a new fire station. I think that's obvious by the comments. I think they think it's important because they've been advertised to. There's a big sign at Meadowview that says new station coming soon. They've seen that for 3-4 years. I don't know how long it's been there. So people are going to say, hey, when's the new fire station? Had we put a sign in front of the current fire station that said renovations to this station coming soon, people would have answered in the survey, when are you going to do the renovations on the fire station? So while people think fire protection is important, the survey results in and of themselves only reflect the advertising that's already been done about this issue, not whether a fire station, renovated station, or another solution is the answer. So one of the things that's on the items that are the guiding principles is We must provide our residents with sufficient and accurate information. And I don't think that that falls into there. So it also says, number 4 says, first and primary obligation is to the residents, to the needs of the DFD service area should be prioritized only when required by the DAFD local. I have a feeling that that was probably said because it's been raised that it could change response times, moving the fire station, can change response times of the townships. So we say, well, we don't care about what our partners happen to them. It's more important what happens in the city. I'm okay with that. On more than one occasion when I was on council, I said the same thing. I said, we need to prioritize the village and the city. That's the most important thing. I understand. However, that also applies to the rest of this discussion. If we're worried about the city, the question is, do we need 10 bays in our fire department? How big is that? I think Dexter's 2.5 square miles, 4,500 people, maybe 2,000 homes. What exactly is it that we're gonna store? I mean, does every neighborhood need their own fire truck? There's gonna be a Westridge truck, and there's gonna be Dexter Crossing truck, and there's gonna be a Huron Farms truck. We just don't need that much space for the equipment to cover the city. It's just silly. We don't need trainers for the entire DAFD. We don't need to train all the people that are gonna be in all the townships. In fact, it should be the opposite. Not only should we take into account primarily the city, we should also be taking advantage of the things that the township has and provides to us as facilities. We're one team. We should take advantage of those. If time comes that we have to stand alone, we can figure out how to do it. Until then, we need to take advantage of those things. The other thing about the local agreement is the main station. The DAFD agreement says the main station shall be in the village of Dexter, at the time village now city. It also defines it. There's been spoken that the reason that the main station needs to be in Dexter is because we want it to be the most important. We want a fire station here. We thought we were the top dogs and it should be here because we had it. Main station is defined in the interlocal agreement as the facilities of the department located in the village of Dexter from which vehicles are dispatched to respond to a fire, rescue, or emergency medical treatment call. There is no other definition. You have had many people in this meeting room say to you, a main station means you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. It is required, it is a need, you must do it. You don't. The DAFD interlocal agreement, as you said in your guidelines that are set out, are the definition. The definition is the station in the city where the trucks are dispatched from. That's it. There are no other requirements. There are a lot of things that we need in there. There's a lot of things that should be there, but that is the only requirement per the guidelines that this council has voted on and said this is what you're going to proceed by. You can argue with it, but you voted on it, you approved it, and that's what you told the community that is going to be your driving factor. So I want to close with just a couple other comments. I apologize, I know it's going on time. I think you all are well suited to make this decision. I'll give you a couple of examples why I think this. A good example is Mayor Keogh. Mayor Keogh has spent 30 years in civil engineering. He literally, in his day-to-day job, works in municipal services. He's an expert. He's a good person to go to if you want to know. Childhood education. Ms. Fisher has spent many years in childhood education. If I wanted to know something about that, I would go talk to her. Paul Cousins has spent decades as a teacher and as a restaurateur. If I wanted to start a restaurant, I would go talk to Paul. I would talk to those experts. I have worked for 30 years in automotive electronics. I spent years in quality, electronics, in electrical systems. I don't consider myself an expert, but I can talk pretty intelligently about a lot of those. If any of you have questions about those areas, you can let me know. I also, when I was in college, I had a graduate level course in power distribution systems. I also worked for Detroit Edison for 16 months. However, I cannot tell you that I am an expert and I understand what it is that goes into electrical distribution systems, into transformers, systems, all that kind of stuff. That is not sufficient to call me or anybody else an expert. Now, if we had somebody from Detroit Edison come in for 10 or 20 sessions and talk to you all about electrical systems, distribution systems, I think we could all have a pretty good discussion on that. And I think that all of you could understand what it is that I knew about electrical systems. That's where you are on fire stations. You've been doing this for a couple of years. You've talked to a lot of different experts with a lot of information. You all are the experts. You've had the information. You've had all of it. Now you just got to make the best decision for next year. And that's the primary goal that you're looking for, is what is the best thing for next year. So thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak this evening? Okay. So here we are. We've been working at this since what, January, right? We all know that. So the next Tuesday is the deadline to get something,
16th.
if we want to ask a question. Next Tuesday is the deadline to get something to the county so that we can ask our residents the question. You know, there's 105 pages of stuff here. Okay, again, in the packet, a lot of it repeat, as Justin said. But I think he nailed it at the bottom of the fourth paragraph on the resolution to submit bond proposal and ballot language. He said the critical piece the city council will decide upon is the not to exceed bond issuance dollar value. The biggest question mark in this whole thing, whether you want to argue over how long we've talked about it, 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, has always been, what is the cost and what do we think the residents would support paying for unimprovement? That's been the biggest question. The question hasn't been where. Okay, it's evolved into what? We want to have a more modern fire station. It's evolved better into that more clearly. I think this council and the past council has done a pretty good job of focusing on that being important. But I think the biggest part of the discussion tonight is that number of what question do we want to ask that we think the community will have a chance of supporting. And we set up our guiding principles and the opportunity statement. Forget what month we did that, but it was early on, right? January, February, I think, or maybe it was early March by the time we got it. It's been out there for 4 or 5 months anyway. And we know that we need to do something with our station. We haven't determined whether we need to renovate it or build a new one. We have not taken a vote on that. Now, Justin put together several of these resolutions. And there were a few more provided in the supplement, all of which get the mind working and thinking, or at least they did me when I saw them all over the weekend, and then again here late in the day. He's caught up to this. I haven't even fully read this whole thing yet, but I think that the resolution and the question need to mirror the opportunity statement that we put out, which means I think that they need to broadly suggest that the improvements to both fire and the sheriff could involve either renovation or new construction. Because there's I mean, the economy in the world is changing. I mean, 2 years ago, we weren't exactly as worried about the inflation as we are today. But even in today's inflationary environment, the cost of supplies like lumber, some materials have come way down from where they were 6 months ago. Now, I don't know any better than anybody else what they're gonna be 6 months from now or 2 years from now, or whatever it is that we get through the design stage. But up until now, we've got a lot of information provided to Inspire Architect. And the most recent piece of information is that the cost of renovating is equal to, or maybe even a little less, but equal to, at best, the cost of new. Right?
Yeah.
I think the question we need to ask needs to maintain some broadness in what the ultimate solution is, and ask the question about the dollar. Yes, sir.
I was working in Dexter Township when they had the question of the millage to build their fire station. And everyone had agreed that they were going to build it at the southeastern corner of the intersection of Town Hall and North Territorial. And because of that, they were able to show that the folks around Portage Lake are going to be within the magic zone of a fire station, and it was going to just slash their insurance rates. So they voted for it. Their motion was very broad, as you suggested, shall we raise 1 mil to build a fire station? The fire station that they built ended up 0.6 of a mile down the road, which took all people on Portage Lake outside of that. So they got no benefit on their insurance. I can't tell you how many of those folks who came in after that were furious about it. And if you had told them that the fire station was going to be in the other place, they would not have voted for it. So I think I would vote for money for a new fire station. I would not vote for putting $10 million into the current location. Like, would you pay $20,000 for a new car? Would you pay $20,000 for a car that's used and may have been in an accident or was flooded or something? They're very different questions, and I think people would answer them differently.
I think that in Dexter Township, though, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, they didn't control that property.
They didn't control where they built it either.
Well, right, they did things out of order. Not that I'm picking on the neighbor, but that we have 2 pieces of property, both of which can work. Both of them at different levels, maybe. But we have, the issue of controlling the property isn't the issue. It's one, it'll be one or the other. But I don't hear people, even when you look at the survey, I don't hear people talking about the location.
I read that, you read that tonight.
The people, when you talk to anybody, not everybody, but most people, for me, the issue is how much do you think we need to spend? If we had a modern fire station, even if you knock the current one down and built a modern, new station on the existing site, all they're focused on is modernizing. They want better living quarters for the firefighters, which we've talked about for years. To this body's credit, to previous council's credit, nobody has not wanted that for the firefighters. Okay, the question has gotten more complicated over time. I mean, I would have spent money to modernize the existing station a decade ago. But I didn't have 3 other people that wanted to do it. I might have had 2. So it makes it hard. I guess what I'm getting at is all of it's over the uncertainty of the cost. Actually, that's really.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah.
My sense with the schools rec millage that did not pass is a lot of people did not like the lack of specificity in what was being proposed. They wanted to know how the money was going to be spent, and they didn't feel like they had that information, so they felt like they were being asked for a blank check. Just putting 2 options in front of the voters, is that at all comparable? I mean, it falls on that continuum. I feel like it's just kicking the can down the road. we've been talking, so you get the money and then you decide what, I mean, I think it will be relevant to some voters. And I think it's just gonna waste more council time. I'm prepared to make a decision to come up with some dollar amount for the new location. I feel like that's what makes the best sense. For, opportunity cost of what other things could happen at 8140. That location being better for the city of Dexter generally. I don't need to delay on the location. I'm happy tonight to come up with a decision based on the new location and some dollar amount there. And I think delaying on that decision is not an efficient use of time.
Delaying on, to be more specific. but
Delaying it,
on
like-
that decision.
The location, deciding the location. If we don't have a knowledge to a location, I think that's just kicking the can down the road. I think voters will want greater specificity. We've talked about having public engagement sessions to give them this accurate information. How muddled is it gonna be if we're trying to say, well, we could do this here, we could do this here, we're not quite sure what we're gonna do, give us the $10 million and we're gonna do one of those things. I mean, I would wanna know what, and, I mean, I guess maybe we should have been spending more time talking about it
So,
up
so,
until this point,
so,
but.
so Jamie, let me keep going with that. a second. So if we had, let's say, back in February, we had said, like you said, how much money can we save? Right, or how much do we dedicate towards it, which is a fair question, and we've rounded about agreed we could come up with about $1 million, right?
Right.
Well, we could have also voted to levy the maximum millage in our general fund. We could bump it to what is it, 12.1, 11.9, I don't know what that's rolled back exactly to. But $1 million, another mill would generate 4.2. So we could have decided to take on a $5.2 million project without getting the public involved. I suggested a couple meetings ago that I'm comfortable going to 2, which means I would have voted for the 1 and I'd vote for an additional 1. You can do a lot with that money. We've been living though in a level that is on the extreme of both situations, of both locations. And I don't think we need to be at that level, regardless of which location it is. But we've not said that the question is to determine which location. We said in February that we agreed that the council has determined the current station needs a significant renovation or a new fire hall needs to be constructed.
So how much further down the road do you want to take the can? I mean, I guess I said tonight,
Well,
I'm prepared to make a decision.
I've said, okay, so if whatever we put out there doesn't pass, what are we prepared to do? Okay. I don't know that I've received a lot of answers to that question. But one of them is we raise the general fund millage up a mill. And we take the 5 million and do the best we can with it. Becomes our decision. Which some people would say is our decision anyway. We're elected, some people might say you're elected to do that.
We took $3 million without voter approval to do this, so I guess
We
it's not.
we voted for 2.5, yes. Yep. I'm just saying that I don't know how many people even read this opportunity statement. But it seems to me that they trust us to make the decision. They want us to get it done, but we don't know how much, we don't know how to describe the project. I think that if we put the question out there and you say, hey, once we know how much we have to spend, we'll get public input on what the whatever it is, whatever number we pick here gets you.
I think that's why the rec mill is there.
Yeah.
Because they said somebody in favor of it, the spokesperson, maybe it wasn't Timmons, said, well, if you're not sure, I think it was, if you're not sure if you're gonna get a raise, do you think about how you're gonna spend that money or not, or do you wait till that happens, or do you wait till you have the money and then make a decision? Anybody I knew who heard that kind of shook their heads and said, well, of course you're gonna have a plan for how you're gonna spend the money, and it's before you get it. So to me, that seems way too similar to what happened with Rec Village. Say, well, just give us the money and then we'll all work together to figure it out.
People do know how we're gonna spend it. I don't think we can fully commit to how we're gonna spend it because we don't know what the costs are gonna be. We don't know if we're approving both the fire station and the police station for the amount of money that we're asking for.
Is that what we're here tonight to decide?
I know there's no certainty in any of it, right?
Well, was there ever?
No, there never has been.
But you, I mean,
So
is
it's like, that's why I think you need to be flexible. with
there
what you're
ever a
scheduling.
project like this, sir? Like, is there some other time historically where you put this out there and you know what the costs are
I
gonna be?
think that when it will become more certain as we go through the process, better define it and bid it out, actually. But I mean, some of these questions, some of the things that have been provided to us as data points, you know, that summary that David's provided, that has all sorts of guesses in it.
Yes.
I mean, it's the best information we have. It gives us a clue as to what amount of money we might need to accomplish something. But those estimates are gonna get better as we go through the process. Anyway, that's my thought.
Well, by choosing, sorry,
Go ahead, please, John.
by choosing the amount 1, 2, 3, in essence, that's what we're doing is limiting ourselves as to what we're gonna do in terms of the size of it. And in part location. So I think that I don't see it as a getting the cart before the horse if you figure out how much money you're gonna have to spend on something. That doesn't offend me. You know, to your point about wasting time, I get that, because I can see through a lot of this stuff, you know, and yeah, but if it doesn't make it, we really then are, if we put it out there, we didn't get it right, and it fails, then you really are behind the eight ball. That's really hard to draw up interest and try to figure out why it didn't make it, that too is the negative part of it. So it's kind of like saying to me, I don't have the answer, but I can see where either way, it could cost you.
So now,
So I've been trying also to, in the light of the school village and all the conversations we've been having to try to kind of make sense of this, right? So there's a part that is definitely the money part. That's a very, to me, crucial, and critical question of it, that is the money. And you know, we put it in front of the voters, if it's without any other thing, with the flexibility of it, that here is the millage, and, you know, give us the money, well, we have these two options. For some people, it would be that, oh, I want to know which option you are picking for me to vote on it. For some people would be, oh, I'm fine for it to be decided by the council that I voted to be on the council, so they do these decisions and look at all the numbers and do all the math for me. So what is at the end of the day, unless we put, here's a question for the money and here is a question for this location or that location. The survey gave us some indications, but the survey was also not in terms of black and white. Do you want this or do you want that? And in that sense, we didn't get, to me, it's not fully the vote of the people. So if we go with the path of we are to make that decision, I think there are two things for us. One is making the decision about how much we want to ask and we are willing to put into a fire station based on all the information we have gathered. That is our best estimate of, we want this much to do a fire station. And then the other side of it is, if we are given that by the voters that vote to make decisions about this, we need to get there sooner than later. To me, if we put it in front of people and it doesn't pass, just because they were like, oh, I don't know which one you're building, then that puts us into a very limited option. And if it does pass, we are back at this table trying to have this conversations of which one do we want to build. I think we are going around it. We should have, in my opinion, a frank conversations of our thoughts in that sense, whether that's what we are putting on the ballot or not. At least, even if we just put the money question on the ballot, but we are having more of a clear conversation here of what are our thoughts about what we think based on all the information we have gathered, we should move forward. At least we have informed our voters of these are the two clear options we are looking for. And then people can speak to that. I don't think we have had the chance of saying what are the things we have considered each of us, and based on that, what are we thinking? We can get the money. If we don't do that, we might have the money. We bet be back at the table to have that conversation, or we don't have that money and then our options are very limited. That's my 2 cents on it. Again, to me, it's not necessarily that we need to have that on the ballot, but to me is that if somebody walks into the room, do they have a clear understanding of what each of us are thinking and have been considering? I feel that I have not said that just because of the opportunity, but I think at least if I'm going to vote to put a number on the ballot and a resident asks me, so Sana, you have been reading about this. What are your thoughts? What did you come to maybe options or conclusions, or how did you even process this information? I have not shared that yet.
Why?
But what you're saying is, maybe have not thought about, something I hadn't thought about before. So what happens if we put it on without the location? What happens if we come back here and we can't get ourselves together and make a decision? Are we just sitting there with the money doing nothing with it? How pissed are people gonna be then?
Well, if we're buying, we'll be obligated to make a decision.
Yeah, but what if,
That's true. Jamie?
Yeah, in the packet, I think Wa had requested something about the Green Oak Charter.
yeah, that was just an
that
example.
did
for us
pass.
to look at. I don't actually know.
I think it did pass.
It did.
So it did pass. Not that far away from us. I don't think, so I'm looking at page 15 of the packet, the actual packet, not the supplement. I don't see their language specifically. I don't think that they had an information. They have an information sheet that apparently went out with their tax bill. And I really like the level of information they provided in there. It was very clear. I'm on page 15 of the work session packet. 15 of 25.
Thank you.
basically spell it out, you know, we're going to the electric, we want this 20-year capital bond, construction of a new fire headquarters, building and purchasing a slider truck, here's the total amount over this time period, here's the millage amount for the first year.
Yep.
Brief paragraph on the current station, brief paragraph on the current ladder truck, specifics about the current operations and how this modification is going to improve, you know, rationale for the report, et cetera. Cost breakdown, you know, they include the millage breakdown. You know, here, it's interesting, they show cost per day, cost per month, you know, we comment tonight. The reason I raise cost per month is because, again, the rec millage, what I read in the paper was a cost per day, and to me, anytime somebody tells me something that's gonna cost per day, I don't budget anything per day, I do budget lots of things per month. And so, I don't even budget that many things annually.
If they
So-
have an escrow, they're paying for the taxes.
Right, and just, I don't know, your utilities are, I don't know, maybe not all monthly, anyways, lots of things are monthly, so that's why I thought monthly and not because I'm trying to put a price on by people. So anyways, here's an example of something in the current economic climate. It did pass, granted, it's, you know, it seems like the total ask was less because presumably it's over a larger population. But this seemed like a nice sample of what some information sheet might look like. I mean, I think I have, you know, to your point, Sam, I think I have said, and I think that's one of the work session here, or even with the discussion or consideration item later on, to say like what I have said to people, and I do think I've said it here, is that, you know, ultimately, I think, and I think we all agree, that it's so incredibly unfortunate that this whole infrastructure, like building up across the area fire department was not an area fire department coordinated exercise. I think that's just so disappointing. I don't know what we can do about that, you know, so I tried to go down the route of, well, hey, maybe we build what we need to build, just for the city of Dexter, and then we try to renegotiate the interlocal, so we get the other, you know, people to pay into it too. Is there a way we can sum up the totals of all the new fire stations and divvy that back out evenly, or however we've done it? I'd love for that to be a solution. I don't think the city of Dexter residents should have to pay entirely for this. But if that's a dead end, you know, something has to be done. And I guess how I've explained it to people, I've said, you know, they were about to go to the council before my time was about to go to the voters 3 times, I think, May, August, and November of 2020. And each time, you know, maybe understandably was nervous about the situation with COVID. Well, obviously we know this many years later, the situation hasn't gotten any better in terms of the economy and what the ask is going to be in escalation costs. And in terms of the location, you know, the way I see it, I see that current property, given the costs are the same, particularly, I see just something, a better use of 8140. I see a better use for the community. I feel like fitting what, you know, fire chiefs, who I would think are the experts in what needs to be done there. If we're trying to put in there what they think needs to be put in there, to me, it feels very square peg round hole that we're trying to force the issue. And if we do have another option, that's why I prefer the other option. If we had no other land in the city to build on, we didn't already own, that's previous council's purchase, you know, potentially for that purpose, then maybe it would be a different situation. But I guess this is how I've explained it to other people. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but that's why I feel like I'm ready to move forward with some number at the new location. Understanding it's never going to be an easy ask, but it didn't get easier given the 3 delays that the previous council agreed to. And I just don't want to be perfect. I just don't want to push that on the future. It's staff time, it's council time, it's consultants time, that's all money. It's not the right idea.
So each of the communities that built stations in the last 10 years on their own did the same thing we're doing, which is say that the community needs outweigh the area needs. Now, we all compromised and got to that as part of our guidelines. And we're not doing anything differently than they did as a body. Or in decision making that they did. They figured it out for themselves where they wanted their stations to be and they built them. And you know, I tried to say this a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was a month ago, you know. I personally think that the downtown station is a better location for a fire station. Because I don't, as mayor, I don't make motions. I can suggest them, but it's not in anywhere in the charter that I get to make a motion. So a lot of times when I'm talking, I'm just suggesting. If there isn't somebody that likes to suggest a motion doesn't get made, but there's what I've said, and it's okay, it's part of the process. But if location is the issue, then now you're shaking your head, and I don't know what it is, but I'm not sure everybody, for some people, and it's okay.
I'll quit
It's okay. Some people may have concluded that they know the location. That's perfectly okay. If you know where you'd like the new station or you'd like to do improvements, it's perfectly okay to have that opinion. But if not, if we don't have 4 people that have decided on that, then I don't know how we can choose one or the other. And that's been the biggest problem. That's been the biggest problem for the history of this. And even when we bought the property, that council was pretty united with that. You know, didn't take it to the next steps. There weren't 4 that wanted to take it to the next step. And I know that's hard. And you know, the kick the can down the road, that's, I don't know if that's appropriate or not. I know it comes out a lot, and I know I'm not saying that you're saying anything wrong with saying it, but you know, I would have liked to have made improvements 10 years ago. But there wasn't, at that time, we made a choice over a park. We had cash. We made a choice over a park, over the facility. And it was a good choice. You could say the community is better off for it. Or at least the decision, the choice was you know, the end result was the park improvements that made this town desirable. Even more so than it was. Zach?
So I wanted to spend just a couple minutes talking about the resolution I put together and why the stuff's in there. And the background where I'm coming for this, who aren't familiar, I have a degree in architecture from the University of Michigan. One of the projects we actually did was designing a fire station for City of Ypsilanti. I have the actual drawings and the model. We got to tour fire stations. Part of that, they instructed us on how things have to sit next together, how things have to be apart, how we have to move through the rooms. That was back in 1999, so that was a number of years ago. I have attended 2 fire station design conferences on my own dime and talked to experts who only design fire stations for a living across the US. I have visited over 12 fire stations since then and spent 1 to 3 hours talking with folks who work in the facilities. So seeing the resolutions that were in there, I thought there were some elements missing. I wanted to include our reasons for doing this. It's part of the communication of here's what's going on, here's why we're making the decision. I included location because again, my observations in city or in Dexter Township, if you're asking for something, you ought to be specific, especially if it's a large number. I did put in $10.9 million. And the reason for that is even with the money we're bringing to the table, if you look at the cost escalation for fire stations, even when inflation was 1 to 1.5%, it was big numbers. It was 10 to 20% per year. Anyone thinks we're going down to 1% inflation between January, let me know. I got a lot of real estate I can sell you in swampy areas. So in my mind, I always prefer to make sure we have the money to do it. It doesn't mean that that's what we have to bond as we work through the process. In January, we'll know better and we can always go less. One of the other things that we haven't discussed at all since January or really ever is tapping other sources of funding, specifically state and federal government. I have had conversations with Representative Dingle and briefly with Lana Tice, Ms. Lisinski. The Scioto Township got $2 million to build a trail. We haven't been asking, and that's been very disappointing. So I expect that that would be the ultimate high end and have dedicated us to looking out and finding other sources. Additionally, I'm very happy to say today on the record, I'd be happy to go to our hardship exemption all the way up to 3 times poverty level for those who are concerned that this would force people out of their house because they couldn't pay for it. And that's all. Well, I did use, sorry, one other thing, the public safety facility. Because currently it's fire and constabulary, but our fire department also does a significant number of health runs, medical runs. In fact, that's like 80% of what their runs are. Even though they don't do medical transport now, there's a chance in the future that they will. And so wanting to kind of encapsulate the full nature of potential use of the site.
I don't have any problem with the public safety facility concept. You know, we just haven't decided. One or both.
I think that's a point of our next. the regular meeting, right?
Well, as I look at it, it's never going to be cheaper to build than it is today. And that was 300,000 for the police element. That's peanuts.
Thank you. I appreciate you reminding us of your education and background. I think most of us have read that a couple of times, or others, I guess. At that portion of, to me, that what you described, I understand your knowledge of the fire stations and what goes into it and things like that. And I have appreciated your insight into things you have shared in that matter. I think for me is understanding what are the needs of our community, what are our obligations through our agreement. And I was very actually happy to hear the perspective of interim chief in terms of interim chief Armstrong, in terms of what are the areas that can be different procedures, and in that sense, savings for the community. As council members, we have to balance what is the knowledge we have and the things that we can do with the stewardship of the tax money that we are asking people to pay. And if we can think of things in a different way to make us better stewards, I think we have to do that. And I was very happy to hear interim chief talk about the things that can be done differently. And I think every organization, to me, organizations are organic. So if they evolve, the needs evolve, the constituents evolve. And it's good to actually have that practice of rethinking of what is the need and what can be done. So for me, there were some points of savings in there that if we think what we are putting in front of the voters and the amount of it, I do want to be very cognizant of that, of what is the ask we are doing. And I think there are ways that, you know, we have said that we can commit into saving $1 million towards this. Also, if we think about the couple of suggestions that the chief gave, that can save us almost $2 million. To me, those should all be considered for us to say, hey, we are considering all of these things. When we are coming to you and ask for money, is not that we say, this is the thing we want, and here is the bill for it, is doing that, our due diligence of step by step of what we are asking for. And to me, you know, when I looked at, when I was appointed on the council, I was 8 months pregnant. And even with that, I went to various people to have a better understanding of what are our needs, what are our circumstances, people who have lived in this community for decades and decades, whose parents have lived in this community. And I also went to our fire department. I got a very nice tour from Chief Smith and was made aware of a lot of things. And I promised not to have my baby on that car ride to Dexter Township. And I learned a lot there. I spoke with the staff, I spoke with people of our town, and the work sessions we have had so far were very helpful as well, because we learned a lot about what can go in there, a better understanding of the renovation, because that was originally sort of more of a estimate drawing versus, well, this one is too, but more of an overview versus more of a detailed one. And to me, for me to make a decision, an informed decision, it also comes to what is the total cost of ownership. It's our duty to our residents, it's understanding the needs, it's being good stewards of the money, understanding the locations of both places, understanding what are the ramifications of putting each station in this way or that way. What are the things that comes around it? Are there things that are missing that if we keep the station in Maine, or if we move it to Mapp, what are the risks? What are the benefits? All of those have to come into play. But what, in terms of money portion of it, I was very happy to see that there are things, and also understanding and appetite from the fire chief to have that conversation of what can we do to make the burden less on our citizens. So in that, I personally, and this is my opinion, have to me, 2 mil, 8.4 is the max, because we have committed to raising 1 million, and there are things that we can modify with the designs that will, and this coming from the fire chief, those who are actually using and practicing it. To me, there is a level of expertise there that we need to respect. And to that, I think we can do that. I know we're coming up to time, but at least that's my thoughts on the money side of it.
Thank you. Second,
So I want to make it clear that this number is intended to a top cap. It hasn't gone through value engineering. It hasn't gone to the point of, if we did a detached building for storing certain things, how would that affect it? We get rid of one bay. So this is intended to be, we want to make sure that we have everything to cover everything, and we can always go less.
But we can stay at that top.
We could, and now I will say, my observations from the process when Dexter Township built their fire station, the fire chief at the time, Mr. Yates, has been around for a long time, but he never built a fire station. And on his advice, Dexter Township took out a lot of things at their station to save money, and they're having to pay a lot more to put them in now. Our current interim chief has not built a station. His career has been primarily outside of fire services with medical stuff and EMT stuff. He's been involved in the addition at Scioto Township. And so when I hear him saying something different from the previous chief who's built over 10 or 12 stations in his career, and his entire career was strictly in fire services, I'm going to put more weight in that. And that's just if I'm investing a lot of money in something, I want to find the best person. I want to find the person who's built 100 houses, not the person who's built 0 houses.
Yes, Don.
Yeah, Zach, you mentioned outside funding sources. How long do you think it would take to secure those?
I don't
To
know.
feed that into the total of the money that you think you need or don't need.
The challenges were kind of out of cycle for a lot of those, but the good news is that there's a lot of money. There's a recent grant for improvements to certain fire stuff, for HVAC systems and mechanical systems and those types of stuff. So I don't really know. My extent of contact with folks is, hey, we're looking to build a fire station. It's weird. We're going to be bothering you. So I can't say.
Do those HVAC systems apply to existing facilities or new?
My reading of the grants was it was very vague and open.
I thought about the HVAC fund, that's what I was thinking, it was for renovation, not new. But I could certainly be wrong, but that's how it's done.
Yes.
I just have 2 quick points. So in the July 11th work session packet prepared by David Gasson is a table comparing the Main Street location and the Mass Ave location. If you remember that, there was a grid, green for yes, yellow for no, that could be helpful for people trying to work through that. Maybe I saw that and that just solidified what I was already thinking, a lot more green on the Mass Ave for the Main Street station, but again, it doesn't mean this is all unit weighted. It doesn't mean each row is equally weighted. So maybe everyone wait and see for those things.
Right.
The other thing, I did see there was a House bill, US Congress, to provide grants for fire station construction through the administration of the Federal Emergency Management Agency for other purposes. This was introduced back in June of 2021, and it looks like that's where it stands. I think it's been sent off to a subcommittee or something like that. But anyways, it seems like there are some people at federal level thinking about, and I think in it they mentioned just how many fire stations, you know, in smaller population communities are over 40 years old and meeting all these improvements. And so they're looking at something there. So it looks like you can sign it and get an alert on that. I mean, that's obviously nothing that's been decided. I couldn't find anything else. I don't know if Chief Smith has done his other potential funding options. But
Okay, we are at 7:03. I don't mind keep going if we feel this is helpful, otherwise we'll be coming back to this topic shortly on the agenda.
I'm happy to make a motion at that time to consider what Zach was included in his packet, but I think that would be the time to do that.
Yeah, we're not doing that. Okay, do we want, anybody want to use the restroom? Jump right in. Okay, we will then call the regular